They tied her up to force her to renounce her grandfather's inheritance. But what Naomi Reed did next turned everything upside down, yeah. That happened. And honestly, if you told me a year ago I'd be living out a plot like this, I'd have laughed right in your face. But here we are. Let me back up a sec because you gotta understand how it started. Early April, the air's still thick with that muddy pine smell. Naomi steps on her late grandfather's porch, the kind of place where the floor groans under your boots. The swing in the corner is frozen in time, and every detail seems to sigh with memories she'd rather not revisit. She hadn't made it back in time to say goodbye, but she'd been the one to bury him alone, not because no one was invited, but because none of the Reeds showed up. That old house still smelled like cedar, dust, and the coffee her granddad used to brew strong enough to wake the dead. Naomi walked through it, hand brushing the rack where his old hat used to hang, her heels echoing down the hallway to the den where they'd spent late nights over blueprints and permits. And he'd taught her to see not just the beams and nails, but the legacy that could outlast them all. He used to say, anyone can inherit holding on, though that's a whole other thing. That morning, for the first time in years, every Reed showed up to read the will, walking in with smiles that barely hid their resentment. Her mother, Lynn, led the parade, hair flawless, face tight, eyes that never softened. Lynn had married up after Naomi's dad was out of the picture. Gerald Hampton, a lawyer with a handshake that felt more like a dare than a greeting. The cousins followed, strangers pretending to be family, everyone circling that mahogany table with a black binder on top, the weight of Silas Reed's entire life reduced to legalese. The lawyers started reading donations, scholarships, a trust for an old friend. Then silence, and finally, to my granddaughter Naomi Clarice Reed, I leave the remainder of my estate, including all financial accounts, real estate holdings, and 100% of shares in Reed Infrastructure Group. You could feel the air shift. Her mother's breath caught. Bryce, the cousin, cursing under his breath, Gerald's eyes narrowing, already sharpening for battle. This has to be some kind of mistake, Lynn said, voice trembling between disbelief and accusation. But the lawyer didn't blink. Everything was airtight, witnesses, doctors, all of it. Then Bryce jumped in, accusing Naomi of manipulating Silas, controlling his meds, shutting out the family. But Naomi, she just looked at them all and said, when none of you came, not once I was there. Gerald tried the business angle, questioning her competence, her right to inherit, making it clear they saw her as a placeholder, not a real Reed. Naomi turned to her mother and, with a half-smile, said, you didn't even show up for his funeral. That stung, but it didn't change anything. The meeting ended in ice. No condolences, no handshakes. That evening, standing alone in the backyard, Naomi realized what she was up against. It wasn't just about money, it was about whether she, a black woman from nowhere, could hold power in a world that expected her to fail. She knelt in the dirt, feeling the earth her grandfather had loved, and decided to let them come. She was done running. The next day, the fight began. Soft at first. Gerald rolled up in his fancy sedan, fake smiling, holding out documents for her to sign, claiming it was for her own good. She didn't bite. You've never done anything for my sake, she told him, standing her ground, refusing to sign a thing until her own lawyer reviewed it. Gerald's mask slippied, threatened delays, suspicion, warned her the shareholders wouldn't wait long. But Naomi just said, you can go now, watching him drive off, dust swirling in his wake. She took the envelope straight to Charisse Aldridge, a no-nonsense lawyer Silas had trusted. Charisse spotted the trap in seconds. Gerald's papers would have transferred Naomi's inheritance straight to Lynn. No way to reverse it. That was the first shot fired, and Naomi knew the war had just begun. In the days that followed, the town turned cold coffee shop. Girls no longer drew hearts in her latte. Her mechanic shop was always booked up. Teachers she'd known since high school didn't answer emails. Then, the Sunday paper dropped a venomous article painting Naomi as a manipulator, a woman who'd wormed her way into her dying grandfather's heart. There were no quotes, just anonymous family sources. The phone rang nonstop, but Naomi didn't hide. Charisse drafted a cease and desist, but the damage was done. The narrative was shifting against her. Then came the redistribution letter, Lynn and Gerald offered Naomi 10% of the estate if she'd graciously return the rest to the family. Legally meaningless, but publicly, it was ammunition. They were painting her as selfish, greedy, unstable. Charisse helped Naomi set up security cameras and digital backups. Still, threats escalated. Graffiti on the construction fence. G's stole his name. Then, a fake psychiatric report appeared in her mailbox, signed by a disgraced doctor, declaring Naomi delusional and aggressive. A blueprint for having her declared incompetent. The bank called about unusual activity. Insurance flagged her. The local store manager refused to look her in the eye. That's when things got uglier. Neighbors stopped her, gently asking if she'd thrown a lamp at her mother during a family dinner. Total fabrication. Then, Charisse called. They're filing for conservatorship, claiming your behavior endangers the estate. 10 days until a hearing. Naomi didn't panic. She documented everything, logged every threat, every call, every slashed tire, every creepy note or dead animal left on her step. She told Charisse, build the case. Let's see how far they'll go. Then she found the voicemail her mother, months before Silas died, pleading with him not to let Naomi convince you to do something you can't take back. Proof her mother had been working against her from the inside. And in Silas's old notebook, one final message. They'll come for her with whispers. I taught her to build now. She has to withstand. Blood only matters when it isn't poisoned. Finally, the family mediation, an ambush in the old equipment shed. Naomi came prepared, wired for sound, GPS beacon set. Inside, Gerald, Bryce, Lynn ready to force her to sign away her inheritance. When she refused, they tied her up, threatened her, tried to break her spirit with violence and threats of a public breakdown. But Naomi didn't fold. She remembered Silas's advice. Shine a light on the termites, burn them out. Outside, Charisse watched the timer. When Naomi didn't emerge, she called the sheriff. Deputies burst in, arrested the family, cut Naomi free. She stood, battered but unbroken, facing them as their plan unraveled. You wanted me to break, she said, but you forgot who taught me how to endure. She walked out into the rain, her story far from over. Days later, in the hospital, bandaged and sore, Charisse brought good news. The will stood, the charges stuck, and Naomi had full control of Reed infrastructure. The old house felt like home again. At the company, Naomi erased the board, wrote, read, and rise. We don't just build structures, we build people. She rebranded, expanded community programs, and lived up to the legacy Silas believed in. The slander was retracted, the mayor called, the press lined up for interviews, but Naomi stayed focused on building futures. On the anniversary of Silas's death, Naomi broke ground on new housing for single mothers, apprenticeships for the overlooked. She stood in the sun, shovel in hand, and told the crowd, when you believe in something enough to bleed for it, stand against your own blood for it, not just building houses, you're building futures. The applause was real, the victory hard-earned. Later, a letter came from her mother. You won, but I hope it doesn't cost you everything. Naomi put it away. Some inheritances come in dollars, others in scars, but what she'd inherited was the strength to stand, to build, to rise. Now, what she built would outlast whatever they try to burn. If this story hit you, don't forget to subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what does justice look like when family is the one swinging the hammer?